Yes, everybody, welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or, of course, if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THL staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me from South Bend, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And Andrew, judging by your backdrop just on that field right behind you, we just saw Carolina lose to Notre Dame, 44-34. A lot to talk about, like we always kind of say going into this. We're going to hit on the offense a little bit, going to hit on the defense as well, because I know there's a lot of talking points with that. But first thing I kind of want to hit on, just kind of the team as a whole. I thought UNC competed tonight. I thought, first half in particular was I thought they played well. They looked solid on both sides of the ball, very manageable going into the second half, held Notre Dame's offense on the defensive side of the ball to not much really, especially, through the running game. But things kind of flipped in that second half for the defense. The offense looked good all night, though, 554 total yards of offense. Thought Sam Howell had a really good night as well, 341 yards through the air, 91 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. So good night from Carolina offensively. A lot different of a story in the second half, but I think the number one takeaway overall is Carolina did compete tonight and did have a chance throughout most of the game to see if they could get a win here.
Well, how about our first takeaway? The number one takeaway we'll address in the third item.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
Look, they did compete. And I actually wrote a column the other day saying that they were coming into this game with no pressure for the first time this season. They had pressure going to Blacksburg. And after that game, the way that turned out, they had pressure up even into Atlanta. Not as much when they went to Georgia Tech, but the way they lost that game put a lot of pressure on them the next 3 weeks. Yeah. And, they won twice. They thoroughly beat Duke. They lost to Florida State team they shouldn't have lost to, and they escaped at home against Miami. So tonight, there were no expectations other than let's see what they got. They took a week off. They had the week off, which they got a lot of work done. They healed up. They refreshed, and they worked on some things. And I thought the offense looked pretty good tonight. I thought the offense looked a lot like it did a year ago and a little bit different moving parts. Sam obviously being an integral part of their run game, but I thought Sam looked really good. He was finding different receivers. I haven't added it up yet. I'm working on it for my 5 takeaways. I think he hit 8 different receivers tonight. Now, of course, Josh Downs was a big part of that, and he's always going to be a big part of it. But for a while, he wasn't. And I think that stressed Notre Dame's defense a little bit. In fact, the first 2 completions were to Justin Olsen. Obviously, when you're finding more guys to catch passes, the offense is going to work a lot better. I think it helped the running game. Chandler looked really good at times. DJ Jones looked really good at times. The offensive line, the in-between the tackles, run stuff, I don't think is an issue anymore. It really wasn't an issue tonight. They got some good runs there. They had some huge holes. I mean, some holes that I could see from my perch up in the press box were big enough for me to waddle through. So a lot of high marks on offense. He had a couple drops, and that the penalty on Marcus McKeith and on Sam's touchdown that came back turned out to be really big. That was a sequence of 2 big penalties, one on a 4th down play on the other end that kept Notre Dame's drive alive, and they scored on the next play. So that was a sequence of about 6 game minutes, 5 game minutes, and maybe 12 to 15 real life minutes where Carolina essentially had an 8-point swap that it shouldn't have had. And I think that changed the way the last part of the game was played. So the offense gave the team a chance to win the game tonight. They put them in position to win the game, but other elements of the team didn't do their part. They didn't oblige, and that's why the Tar Heels lost this game.
Yeah, I tweeted it at some point during the game, but I thought Carolina played some of its best stuff on the offensive side of the ball in particular tonight in spurts. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think so. They haven't looked like last year very often this year. Virginia was an example. And tonight, and when they're running the ball between tackles and they're spreading it around, that's what the offense is designed to do. And they did that enough tonight to win the game. 34 points, 550 yards, whatever it was, in this stadium against this defense, even without Kyle Hamilton, that's winning football. But there were other aspects of the game that were not winning football, and that's why the Tar Heels lost.
Yeah, Carolina with 554 total yards of offense. Notre Dame just with 528. So Notre Dame still had a lot of yards, but Carolina did end up outgaining them despite the 10-point loss. Let's talk about Sam real quick. Obviously, it's a guy we talk about a lot, and for valid reasons because of how good of a player he's been for the Tar Heels, but set the UNC record tonight for most passing yards in Carolina history, passing TJ Yates, who previously had the mark with 9,377. I think he did it in like 12 less games than TJ Yates as well. So super impressive stat from Sam Howell, and just, continues to show how good he's been. But just besides those accolades, I thought he was really gritty tonight. I thought he fought. I mean, it was it's very similar to performance in some ways to what we saw, only a week ago, a couple weeks ago, I should say, against Miami, when I really thought he willed that team to victory with some of his running, and just he was lit up in that game. And that's one thing we hit on in three things. So I think Sam tonight, we talk about him a ton, passing, setting the record, playing the way he did, 341 yards through the air, 91 rushing yards, like I said earlier. I thought it was a good performance from him again in a very tough environment against a good Notre Dame defense.
Yeah, he passed 10,000 total yards for his career.
Passed that as well.
He passed the 100 touchdown mark for touchdowns accumulating, being a part of. And, of course, the all-time passing leader. But, all that stuff aside, I'm going to go basketball here very quickly just because I think tonight was sort of maybe my epiphany on this one. Of course, I was wondering about this before, but he kind of reminds me, there's a Tyler Hansbrough-esque thing about the way he plays football. Different sport, obviously, but his ability to just grit through stuff. And sometimes it's not always super pretty. And sometimes dudes think that they have him stopped and he keeps going. That was the case on his touchdown. Sort of like the way Hansbrough was. Guys thought they had him stopped and he'd triple pump fake and go up and under and go off balance. He'd score and draw foul. Sam is able to do things like that. He is highly skilled. He's a highly skilled athlete, but he's also one of the grittiest athletes I've ever covered. And twice tonight, it took him a while to get up. Longer than I can recall earlier this year. And we're seeing more and more of that. He's taking a beating. And clearly, every team is smart. You want to take the quarterback out, right? You're not trying to injure him, but you're trying to take him out. It's part of football. Notre Dame was certainly after him. And Carolina, by a lot of the design runs, a lot of the RPO runs, they add on the hits that Sam's taking. But, man, he keeps on going. He's a special, special competitor. And he's also an incredibly gifted and skilled player. And there aren't many of these guys that come along in college football. And he's doing it, unfortunately, in a season that I know he hasn't always been at his best. I think the circumstances around have affected that. But, tonight, when other dudes are getting open and other dudes are catching the ball, look at how much better Sam looked. Look how normal he looked tonight. Yeah. That wasn't always the case this year. So a lot of Sam's issues and some of the criticism that he's gotten, believe it or not, he has gotten some, haven't just been him. There's 11 guys on the field. Quarterback can't do it all himself, as we saw tonight. Because in the second half, for a while, it looked after Chandler's touchdown run, Sam kind of had to carry a heavy load. Had to put him on his shoulders. And, they were inside the red zone, with 20 seconds left, with a chance to score, make it a 3-point game, and then try their hand at an onside kick. Given how the defense played, given some of the untimely penalties, given a couple of the special teams mistakes that were out there, that says a lot about the offense that we hit on in the first part of this video. And then it says a lot about Sam. And I think in the end, it was just an amazing performance by him. He did it in a phenomenal place. I'm sure the people here came away really impressed by what he's all about and saw that he's not a system quarterback. He's just a dude that gets it done when he's got to get it done most of the time. And unfortunately for him, and unfortunately for the offense, and unfortunately for the Tar Heels, it wasn't enough tonight. They were unable to overcome the third part that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, last thing I want to talk about, it's got to be the defense. A ton of chatter on Twitter about that all game. Really won't go into that, but if you want to see a little meltdown, go check that out real quick.
I don't think this is a news flash.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, no, definitely. It's somewhat warranted as well. 528 total yards for Notre Dame, like I mentioned. Even more. Just going to run through some kind of crazy stats right now. 331 yards and 27 points in the second half alone for Notre Dame. Kyron Williams, 202 rushing yards, 175 came in the second half. What was it, a 91-yard run and one play alone, basically, in the second half for Williams as well. Jack Cohn, quarterback, threw for 213 yards, one touchdown. I thought really a sequence of events that kind of summed up Carolina's defensive performance, particularly in the second half, and really what got the snowball effect kind of rolling downhill for the Tar Heels on defense was, Carolina coming out with the ball, scoring in their opening drive in the second half, kind of getting a little bit of momentum. And then Carolina, 3 plays and 75 yards later, 58 seconds later, I should say, Notre Dame scores again. And I thought that really was the theme we saw for the rest of the second half. Just, I thought Carolina offensively looked okay in the first half. I thought it was a pretty good performance, but just had no answer for Williams. Couldn't make stops when they needed to. Notre Dame got on the roll and, for lack of a better term, just really never looked back.
I tweeted out after Carolina got a 3-and-out in the second half, which was only 3-and-out of the game.
Yeah.
And it was their second 3-and-out because the first one was a 75-yard score.
It's a good point, yeah.
And not that I'm trying to make fun of it. It just sometimes you got to throw humor in there because the way the defense plays sometimes the only way to address it is with a little bit of humor because it doesn't – somebody I know very well texted me and said it's comical how bad they are at times. And that's their opinion. But I think that if people don't want to be angry and they want to move past anger, they have to kind of reach that. Okay. And there's no other way to articulate what the defense has become. And I'll tell you this, when Notre Dame got the ball with 3 minutes and 22 seconds left in the first half, the score was 10-10. All right. Carolina had just kicked a field goal and made it 10-10. And from that point on, over the last 2 quarters and 3 minutes, Notre Dame had 408 yards and 34 points. This is a team that came in averaging 370 yards a game. Mm-hmm. This is a pedestrian offense. Again,
yeah, it's not great.
Use that word. The Fighting Irish ran for 293 yards. Coming into the game, they were number 115 in the nation, averaging 107 yards. Mm-hmm. Now, 91 was on the Williams run. Mm-hmm. But that still has them way over 107, still an unacceptable number. You know, they had Karen Williams stopped and they stiff-armed Tamon Fox and was able to get free. Mm-hmm. You know, when the defense is going really poorly, stuff like that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. You look down there and you're watching him play, Jacob, and there are times where Notre Dame started a drive, and it's not just Notre Dame. It was Miami. It was Florida State. It was Georgia Tech. And it was Virginia, where you think there's no chance the defense to stop them. I mean, I thought that was the case at the end of the Miami game. Mm-hmm. But Jeremiah Gilmore made a play. He got to Van Dyke's hand, and Cedric Gray caught the ball. Otherwise, they probably score and win that game. Mm-hmm. But it didn't happen because guys made a play. They didn't get that play tonight. They didn't get pressure on the quarterback. Receivers were wide open all over the field. They missed a boatload of tackles and no picks, nothing like that.
No turnovers.
You know, 33 games in, and this is what the defense is doing. I asked Jeremiah Gilmore after the game, you know, so often after one of these performances, I ask you what the problem was, and you say communication. I said, was it communication again? And he said, no, it really wasn't communication as much tonight. He didn't say they just didn't play well, but he went into a few other things. It'll be in one of our stories. And I asked Mac, you know, what is the level of frustration? And clearly he didn't want to talk about it, but he had to. And in the end of my 2 questions, he said, you know, they scored too easily.
Yeah.
That's not a good thing to say when a defense I know they're still young, as Dina's series that we ran over this past week, noting the star rankings and where all the 4-star guys are on defense. They're all, for the most part, either just turned 20 or they're not even 20 years old yet. But you still got to be better than this. This is game number 8 in year 3, and you got to be better than they were tonight. And this is an issue that they have to address. It's the same stuff. It's the same problems. I know that they're frustrated. I know Jay Bateman's frustrated. I know that Mac is frustrated. But it doesn't appear, based on their performances, and we only could go by that. We can't go by stuff that doesn't occur. We have to give perspective and evaluate what actually happens on the field in front of us. And it's not working out very well right now.
Yeah.
They've allowed – Georgia Tech's offense is not very good. They got shredded by them in the second half. Florida State's offense isn't very good. They got shredded by them in the middle 2 quarters. Miami's offense isn't that great, and they got shredded by them in the second half. And then tonight, Notre Dame only didn't score on 2 possessions.
Wow.
If you take away getting the ball with 2 seconds left in the first half.
Yeah.
Go back and look at what Notre Dame did against Toledo. Go back and look at some of the other games. They made, in maybe an average offense, look phenomenal tonight. Mm-hmm. And that's happened too often this year, and it's something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not – this isn't attack journalism. I told you a million times before, man. Teams that we cover, they determine what we write. They determine what we say. And they determine whatever our perspective ultimately is. I think there were some good things to take out of this. I thought that the team was loose. It came into it with no pressure. And I thought they handled adversity throughout the game well. They were right down there in the red zone again. Mm-hmm. They didn't let adversity beat them tonight. They handled it very, very well. Mm-hmm. But the defense just didn't make the plays. Mm-hmm. Notre Dame had a 3-play 75-yard scoring drive and a 1-play 91-yard scoring drive. Mm-hmm. When that happens, you're not going to win, especially when you come in here. Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of elements of this team played well enough to win tonight. But the defense is just not playing well, Jacob. They're not getting the job done.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with that. Just it's no shots at anybody, or anything like that. It's just facts, for what we've seen for a majority of this year against some, like you said, pedestrian to very mediocre offenses at times. Carolina just
523 total yards for a team that came in averaging 370.
Yeah, we talked about that in the preview podcast. This isn't a Notre Dame offense or really even a Notre Dame defense that's spectacular by any means. I think that's why you saw Carolina be able to be so successful on offense. But defensively, 44 points. No, I didn't really expect that many points to be let up from Notre Dame just based on the stats. But yeah, defensively, Carolina just had no answer for Kyron Williams in particular in that second half.
It gets tougher Saturday.
Yep. Yes,
the best offense that they will face this year, they play Saturday.
Yep. Noon kickoff. I know that was just announced.
Yeah, noon kickoff at Canaan.
Yep. Not too long ago. So noon kickoff against Wake Forest coming up, but Carolina losing tonight 44, 234 in South Bend to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. AJ, safe travels back, man. I know you got a long night ahead of you and an early flight in the morning. So we'll let you run and get on it. No rest for the wicked, as they say. But appreciate you hopping on here, AJ. As always, guys, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well, and keep it locked at TarHeelIllustrated.com for all your post-game coverage from tonight's game. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.